All right, everybody. So I play a lot of Rocket Raccoon. I have like 20-ish hours on the character. I'm only gold 3, so we're not going to worry about ranks. However, watching a bunch of Rocket Raccoons and seeing a bunch of the debates going around about whether or not he's good or bad. One thing I have noticed in my hours of playing him is he is not being used in the best way, especially his res beacon. So today I wanted to show some res spots on this map in particular on the defensive side, and where they can be placed for the best utility for your team. So we're going to pretend the payload's not here, and it's just kind of doing its thing. So first off is at the beginning of the match, one of the better spots you can put this. Actually, can I cap this in? One of the best spots to put it is right here at the beginning of the match. This allows for, with the 50-meter range, if people are attacking about right here, you can still get the res if they do end up dying, and they'll be right back into the fight so they don't have to walk all the way back. So this can be a good spot. It's also a good spot for people to take cover and hide behind and maybe get some of the health pack bonuses there. However, if this does get found, because there is a pathway right around here from the top of their spawn, you can also do a little cheeky one back here in this room. This is another good spot to do it. Same thing, it's the same range. As long as they don't go too far, like right into the enemy spawn, it tends to be able to get it from there. Another spot is in this room. I don't advise this one because a lot of people do get pushed in here, and when the attackers get a little too far, they will come in here for the health pack and probably find it. Another cheeky spot, a lot of people don't go on this left side either, so putting it right on this health pack can be a good spot as well. And it also means that if the flanker or one of your DPS is the one dying, they'll res and they'll be right behind the enemy, be able to get hits from there. The last spot on this map in particular is one I don't advise, but is something you can do. If at the beginning of the match, the enemy team pushes out and you can actually slip behind them in a manner like this, you can throw it back here behind them, and if anyone dies, they will immediately be behind the enemy team. Again, I don't advise this one, but if you're going for a really cheeky play, that can be a decent one to do. Once the payload pushes up to about here, your best locations are typically behind the statue over here. You can also throw it back here in this little location here. The problem with this one is that the armor packs coming out can give it away, but if they're too focused on looking forward, oftentimes they won't find it.
Only 60 seconds left.
Another spot is in this corner in here. That can work. And then obviously behind this bush, a lot of people don't go in here, but this can be a good spot as it'll still hit the team and whatnot. You can also, if the team is getting pushed really hard, throwing it back on the back of these stairs also isn't terrible. It's a little close to your spawn, but it is closer, and they don't have to wait for the full respawn timer. So it can help your tank come back into the tank, or come back to the game faster.
Hold them off. We almost got this.
Also, throwing it up here is never a bad idea. You can put it back here, and things like that. Now, once we get to once the payload pushes here, you do still have some spots you can throw it up. This is typically one of the spots I like to use is back here. While some people do like to try to get the high ground before they are able to push this high ground, having it here can be a good spot for your teammates to get a reset. Another good location is back here behind this tree over here. While they can see it when they come out of spawn, it's not as easily seen as you would think. It's mostly just the very tip of it that comes out. And again, as long as your team is pushed to about this location here, they'll still hit it. There's also up here behind this. I don't recommend this one too much because even though the location is decently well hidden, the moment they try to pull up at high ground, they will destroy it almost immediately. I also don't really prefer putting it in this room, even though this is also a common spot, because a lot of people do like to push in here once the payload hits this location. Back here in this room is actually usually a decent one. Right here, as long as the payload isn't too far pushed up, right there also works decently well. And then if things are looking dicey and they are pushing in a lot, Again, very close to the spawn room, but just putting it right here can be a godsend for some. Again, it avoids the respawn timer, so it can get someone back into the fight a lot more quickly. And that goes for down here as well. I prefer up there because it gives them the high ground and gives them more options. But then there's also this location here, so they can kind of just push right in immediately. Now, next is once the payload's pushed here. This is where things get a little bit trickier, as there aren't too many guaranteed spots for this one in particular. What I do recommend in one of the better locations is this little room over here. A lot of people do not go into this room on either side very, very often. So putting it in this hallway somewhere is often a good idea, especially on the defensive side of things. And then in general, just putting it like on top of these stairs, like right here, is also often very good, as it can hit pretty much the entire site for the most part. Another location I really do enjoy is up here. Not directly up, but if you can put it right here at the base of the stairs, they can't really see it when they're coming up, or even once they turn around, unless like they are actively like scanning this location here. And then obviously putting it closer to your spawn is never a bad idea, especially on the end point, but putting it back here behind this little corner is also very good as well. And then if worse comes to worse, there's always the tried and true locations, like here is pretty decent. Again, unless they get the high ground super fast, then you can just delete it and move it, obviously. But again, that is very close to your spawn, but does avoid the respawn timer, which is something you do want to try to avoid a lot with it. And if you want to go for a really cheeky one, their spawn is behind that door. So putting it back here, if you're going super hard aggressive with your tank or with a diver or something, can also be very beneficial, as it gets them back to the fight immediately. And then obviously, like I said, this hallway earlier, it's basically in the same location. Alright, so attack is a little bit trickier, because it really does depend on where the payload is a lot of the times. Right out of spawn, I usually don't place one, but if you need one to place, jumping out of spawn and putting one right around this corner is usually a decent spot. Again, it avoids that timer, so people can come back faster. And a lot of this is going to be reverse of what I was saying on the defensive rounds. Put one in here once the payload pushes up a little bit more. Get a little cheekier and maybe throw it over here. I don't recommend this, as it can go up and be shot out from the corner. Once the payload rounds the corner, putting it in this room is actually pretty decent. They can get to it from a flanker's perspective, so maybe not the best option if you know they have a flanker like Psylocke or something like that. Putting it back in this corner isn't advised, because they can actually see it from that door. Or putting it behind the statue, though, is where I do recommend. It is out in the open, but again, unless they're flanking completely, it's usually not found. And then you can kind of come up here around this spot and put it again right back here. This will hit most of the site still, and be able to save someone that respawn thing. The thing with doing rockets, beacons on attack, again, it's really dependent on where the payload is and how your team is playing. But for the most part, you kind of just want to keep it out of sight, out of mind, in a spot that's not too close to the respawn, but also not too far away that it can't be used by the people it needs to be used by. Once the payload gets here, again, coming out from spawn, there's really no need to do it for the most part, unless you absolutely need that quick respawn. But doing it behind this tree can help if you need the quick spawn. Once the payload pushes up a bit, and even like until it gets to about here on this corner, a good spot is typically here. No one tends to see this. You can also put it a little farther back on the ramp and things like that. And as long as no one's playing in this spot in particular, it usually won't be found too often. Another thing you can do once you push up and take the high ground, again, kind of the inverse of the defense one I showed. Once the payload gets to about the bridge, putting it in here can be very good. Again, a lot of people don't tend to come up here once the payload is pushed, even the flankers, as the bridge is usually destroyed by then. And then if you want a really, really aggressive one, their respawn does make them come out of that little location there if they want. Putting it in this room can often get you a very cheeky respawn once the payload is past the bridge, and really, really help you in a case like that, as your flanker or even your tank can kind of come out and maybe do something with it. Once it gets past this point, I do not recommend putting it in this room. A lot of times people on the defensive side will try to use this to flank around, and it will get found almost immediately. Or up there. Do not put it up there either. Same situation. Under here is never a good idea either. Not directly under here, though. Behind it can often work. But again, this is destructible, so it can be shot out, and it really just depends on how the map geometry is treating you that day. And this hallway can actually be a pretty decent spot, as a lot of people don't tend to come through it very, very often. Now, once it reaches this door is when things get a little trickier. Much like on the defensive side, the attacking side on this particular stretch of the map is kind of is not so set in stone. A lot of times I actually like to put one here. Now, while this wall can be destroyed, it often isn't for at least a little bit until the payload pushes to about here. And this one usually doesn't get seen too often, as a lot of people try to take either the flank route there, hold the choke here, or maybe just spam out of here, and if you see that, just get rid of it. Otherwise, again, the upstairs here, a lot of people don't really tend to use too much, but on the attacking side, rather than putting it in this hallway, putting it here is often better so they can't see it immediately. And then in this room as well, putting it in here is something that a lot of people don't tend to use, as it is the spawn room for the attacker. So there's no way for them to come from in here. So once you get in here, you can kind of do this, and unless they back up into that location, the rest is beacon is basically safe. Now, once it gets past this corner, again, much like on attack, this spot is not ideal because of where the spawn is. However, throwing it underneath their high ground is something I like to do, as a lot of people don't tend to look down, and if they are, that means they're not looking at your team. Even though it is a low health thing and it is easy to destroy, a lot of times that couple seconds can buy you way more time than you need. I also like to put it in this room as well once the payload is pushed up into this little corner here. And then another thing you can do once you reach the end of, once the payload gets to about here, is on these stairs. Again, putting it right here can often be a very good location. Not too much closer to that, but it also gives them a flank spot, as they can flank here, or they can rush through here and get them at the last second. If you want to get super duper aggressive, there's not really too many spots on the attacking side to put it where it can be hidden. However, if you push the people off the high grounds and they're kind of doing a last stand kind of thing, putting it on this health pack here can actually be very detrimental to them. As anyone who spawns from that is basically got a free shot at anyone either on the payload already trying to stop that last push or coming through there. Alright, everybody, that's pretty much it. If there's any spots that I missed or anything that you know about, just post it in the comments, and I'll see if I can maybe do an updated video. I'm going to be doing this for all the maps on Rocket. This channel is basically going to be dedicated to guides and such on Rocket. While he's not the most mechanically intensive character, there are still some things like res spot locations and when to pop ult and things like that that I think do need to be talked about a bit. Again, I'm going to do a whole video on this as well, going over discussion topics for Rocket, particularly the community sentiment on him at the moment, and how the problem isn't necessarily him. But, you know, like and sub for all that stuff, and I'll see y'all in the next video.